Michigan's Adventure may get laughed at for being the runt of the litter in the chain. It may also get laughed at for its lackluster lineup. And it may get laughed at for not just being as good as the other parks in the Cedar Fair chain. I'm sure you've heard time and time again how Michigan's Adventure is a terrible park to go to. How it just feels run down and the quality is just not there. But no, Michigan's Adventure is a fantastic park that you should visit. And why should I know this out of all people? Because I was there the same day as the one and only Coaster Studios. And if you've seen his video, apparently it's the worst place in the world. Yes, Shivering Timbers was closed on my visit, but only because it ran into the train in the station a day before visiting. But even with their star attraction closed during the day, we still had a very fun time at the park. Let's have a rundown on what Michigan's Adventure has to offer coaster-wise. Obviously, we have Shivering Timbers, the giant CCI wooden coaster. We have Corkscrew, a very classic aero looping coaster, which I would say is awesome and fantastic. Next up, we have Wolverine Wildcat, Dane Corporation's first coaster ever made. Following that, we have Thunderhawk, a relocated Vekoma SLC from Geauga Lake. Another coaster is Mad Mouse. This is an aero wild mouse, only a few left in operation. Another little family coaster they have is Zach's Zoomer. And for the kiddie coaster, Woodstock Express. Yes, that is really not the best of lineups for an amusement park to have, but for Michigan's Adventure and what they have, you just have to go with it, and it's alright. And with every company that owns something across the United States, multiple of things, let's give a comparison. A fast food restaurant owns hundreds of locations across the United States, and you're going to have your higher end locations that bring in more money, and the locations that are still there, they don't bring in as much money. Those are the smaller locations. This is the same thing with Cedar Fair and basically every theme park operator. Michigan's Adventure is kind of like the smaller value restaurant in the fast food chain. They're not supposed and they're not meant to bring in the most money for the company. They cater for the area that they're in, and Michigan's Adventure isn't in the most populated area. But a place like Knott's Berry Farm is right in the middle of California, right next to Disneyland. So they have a lot of people coming in their area. So that would make sense to have a Michigan's Adventure down there, because they wouldn't be able to handle the crowds. Another factor to pay attention to when adding an attraction or addition to a park like Michigan's Adventure: does it make sense to add this attraction to the park? Will it be worth it? Will we make a return on investment when adding this new addition to Michigan's Adventure? Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but to what I think the answer is just no. If you take a look at the past 20 years, they've added basically nothing besides the relocated Vekoma SLC. It is no. That definitely shows that the return on investment when adding a new addition to the park is not that high, and if not any at all. Michigan's Adventure is just a park that Cedar Fair owns that just collects money for them and for the company, so they can put it in for bigger attractions at other parks. But even with all that bad news, we still had a fantastic day. The park felt great, and for the atmosphere the park had, it was awesome. And for what coasters that they offer, they're still fun. This is no means a bad park at all, like what other people have said before. Throughout my visit here at Michigan's Adventure, I rode Corkscrew the most, because it was just plain fun. I love aero loopers. I don't think they're rough and boring. I think they're fun and enjoyable. It wasn't bad at all. Maybe because I'm just a taller person, but if you just keep your head forward, or if your head just clears the over-shoulder restraints, then you'll just be totally fine. Yeah, the layout is really short, but this was one of the first coasters to invert people. Those double corkscrews are an icon to the coaster industry, and they look really good going over the entrance plaza. Aero loopers are just such fun rides, and even though they're out of business, I really hope they stay around for the long run, because they are fantastic. Another coaster that kind of surprised me on our visit to Michigan's Adventure is Wolverine Wildcat, Dane Corporation's first coaster. At first, I thought this coaster was going to be extremely rough and be the worst experience I've ever experienced, But I was wrong. The ride wasn't actually that rough. I had a okay time on this ride. Yes, this could be a perfect RMC candidate, but we know that won't happen, and we just have to accept for what it is, and it's not that bad. Between those turnarounds, when you dip down, there's some surprising airtime moments there. It caught me by surprise. I didn't know Den could do something like that. I'd also mention that I rode in the back car, and as I said, it wasn't that rough. Yeah, the layout isn't really that good at all, but you just have to accept it and just go with it. And once you do that, you can like it for what it is. Another coaster that I thought was fun and enjoyable was Mad Mouse, the park's Aero Wild Mouse. I do prefer the Mock Rides Wild Mouse, but still this Aero one was good fun. Yes, this is your typical Wild Mouse, also with the worst capacity ever imaginable, but still once you get on it, you still had a good time. It would have been cool to see more Aero Wild Mouse, but the problem is that they were very expensive. Way more expensive than what the competition had. I believe only 4 were ever sold, and one of them is defunct. And the reason for that are those big chunky supports. These things were very structural sound. People would make jokes saying, if you were caught in a tornado, just hop on an Aero Mouse. Not sure why they were like this, but they are. And that didn't really work well for Aero, as the others in the competition, like Mock Rides, sold way more because of their affordable design. But with all that said, this Aero Mouse was awesome and a very fun and enjoyable ride. Another coaster on their lineup is Thunderhawk, a relocated Vekoma SLC from Geauga Lake. They shipped this to Michigan's Adventure in 2007 when Geauga Lake shut its doors for the last time. People do say this is the smoothest SLC out there, besides Great New Easter, but this is only my second SLC, so I wouldn't really know that. But one thing I can say on these SLCs is that the layout is pretty good. It's a really fun and enjoyable layout, but just the ride experience isn't the best. You have those bulky over-the-shoulder restraints, and that will bash your head from side to side, but just try to keep your head forward, and then you should be alright. People say SLCs are the worst things ever, and they're just extremely bad, but they're not that bad. You'll be fine, just ride it, it's okay. They also have 2 kiddie coasters called Zach's Zoomer and Woodstock Express. They're really not that important, so we can just skip over them. But those were all the coasters I rode at Michigan's Adventure, because Shivering Timbers was closed for the day, as previously stated. But there's really not a lot to say, for me at least, about Michigan's Adventure that's bad. We had a good time coming to the park. It did not feel run down whatsoever, and it was just awesome. Yeah, it would be nicer and cool if this park was shown some love, just a little bit more, but I understand why it's not. I had fun on about every coaster I went on at the park. Now, it's definitely not worth going like every year because there's not going to be anything new. But maybe like every 3 to 4 years, just come back because it is still a good park to visit. And with that being said, thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. If you've made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing as it will greatly benefit the channel. This has been Coasters Every Day, and I'll see you all later.